Molly, Molly, where are you?
The elderly woman grasped her lower back tiredly and straightened up with a groan. It was getting harder and harder for her to keep track of her fidgety granddaughter, who was growing up to be a real tomboy. At 5 years old, she cleverly climbed trees, willingly fought with the yearlings, and, after making up, led their gang. But the girl showed no signs of settling down. "I'm here, Grandma!" Her granddaughter ran up and cuddled affectionately to the old woman, who rubbed her shaggy head and called her into the house.
"Come on, my little brat. I've picked you some strawberries and poured a glass of milk for you."
Mrs. Northern looked with pain in her heart at her grimy granddaughter, who impatiently scrubbed her face with dirty hands, rushing to the table.
"But wait a minute. Let me wash you myself."
Under Mrs. Northern's soft palm, Molly's face glistened and turned pink, and now she was already eating her favourite dainty, cheerfully working with a big spoon. Mrs. Northern sighed. 3 years ago, Nina, Mrs. Northern's daughter, had brought her 1-year-old granddaughter and asked her to look after her for a few days. Mrs. Northern had no idea that it would drag on for several years. As it turned out, Nina simply abandoned the girl, preferring to arrange her personal life elsewhere.
"Oh, you poor dear,"
moaned Mrs. Northern and wiped away tears. How her heart ached for this little girl, whom she herself had taught to walk and talk. She gave all her love and care to the girl, but her heart troubled her more and more often. She was so afraid that one morning she would not wake up and would frighten the little girl. Suddenly, a large black car stopped at Mrs. Northern's cottage, and Mrs. Northern, quickly wiping away her tears with the end of her apron, stood up in surprise.
"Who could that be? Let's go and see."
When she saw a tall man in an austere suit, her heart treacherously trembled again. Had one of the neighbours mentioned that Molly grew up without parents, and this strict-looking man came from guardianship? A million thoughts raced through Mrs. Northern's mind as she watched the man approach along the path from the gate. He came up and silently examined the stooping figure of the old woman, to whom the little girl, with her sharp and curious nose, clung in mute fright. "Hello," began the stranger in a soft, pleasant voice. "My name is Hector. Can I see Nina Northern?" Mrs. Northern's heart lifted. So he wasn't looking for Molly. Yes, the man couldn't take his eyes off the girl.
"I'm her mother, but she doesn't live here."
"And this is her daughter?"
"Yes, and who are you exactly?"
"I'm the father of this little girl." The ground seemed to drop from beneath Mrs. Northern's feet. He had come for her, for Molly. Mrs. Northern swayed, then opened the door to the house.
"Come in, then. We shouldn't talk out here. And I've got the kettle on."
While pouring tea into cups, she asked,
"Where did you and Nina meet?"
"Nowhere. I've never seen her."
"But how?"
Mrs. Northern said, completely confused.
"And you said—"
"Yes, indeed, I told the truth, Mrs. Northern. You'll understand everything now. You see, my wife couldn't have a baby for a long time. We did everything we could, put in much money and effort to help her conceive. In the end, we succeeded, and wife carried twins, a girl and a boy. When the due date came, the girl was born strong and healthy, but there were problems with the boy. My wife, she died in childbirth." Hector sighed heavily and fell silent. Finally, having collected his thoughts, he continued, "At that same hour, your daughter was in labour. I learned this with great difficulty. Don't ask me what it cost me. Nina had a daughter too. Well, the girls were switched at the hospital. Apparently, while they were dealing with my son and my wife, they switched them. How it happened, I don't know. I only realised it these past few days. I just learned that my son needs a major Surgical procedure, requiring a full blood relative. Some cells need to be transplanted. I was relieved. After all, he had a sister. My boy could be saved. Imagine my shock when I discovered that all these years I had been raising a daughter who wasn't my own. But there was no time to marvel at this. I had to find my girl. I hired specialists, and they quickly traced her to Nina. That's why I'm here. I'm willing to pay you for what you've done for the girl, but understand, I must take her away." Mrs. Northern looked at Hector with wide eyes, then pointed at the door. "Go away. I won't let you harm my granddaughter. No way. I don't need your money. I've lived all my life without it, and I'll continue to do so. You have no proof. And don't come back here again. Goodbye." Hector stood up. "I could sue and make a serious case, but that would take too long. I can't risk Tommy like that. I'll leave now, and you think about what I said. Here's my phone number. Call me if you need anything." "There's nothing to think about, and I won't call." Hector looked at the stern face of the old woman and went out. She sank down heavily on the creaking old stool. "Granny, who was that?" Molly whirled around her. Mrs. Northern silently pressed her granddaughter's curly head to her lips and quietly shed tears. A few days later, Nina came to them. "Hello, Mammy, how are you? Oh, my daughter, how big you've grown. Come to me, Molly." But the girl only glanced at the woman and snuggled up to her grandmother. "So, you've come at last. Is it your conscience speaking? Isn't it a little late?" "Oh, Mum, please don't start. I've had enough of this since childhood. I'll sleep here tonight, and tomorrow Molly and I will leave. I've got a good job, plenty of money, and she needs to go to kindergarten. Simply put, I'll relieve you of your duty." "But what about me?" Mrs. Northern threw up her hands, and bitter tears rolled down the old woman's wrinkled cheeks. "I've grown so attached to her. Maybe I could come with you." "Mum, don't be ridiculous. My flat isn't rubber." Mrs. Northern sighed heavily and spent the whole night awake, packing Molly's things. But in the morning, Nina didn't even glance at the prepared bags and shouted at her mother, "Are you crazy? Where would I carry these rags? No need, I won't take anything. Is that the taxi? All right, Molly, kiss your grandmother and let's go." "Wait!" Mrs. Northern threw up her hands. "Wait, Nina. Don't leave. I'll be right back." The old woman ran into the house. "Why isn't Grandma coming with us? You promised." Standing by the taxi, the girl stomped her feet and cried. But Nina slapped her and swiftly pushed her into the back seat. She sat down beside her, and the car drove off. Mrs. Northern ran out, clutching a small teddy bear, Molly's favourite toy, without which she couldn't fall asleep. "Nina! Molly!" Mrs. Northern stretched out her hands with the toy, as if she could catch or stop the departing car. The old woman stood for a long time, swallowing tears and dust, then, choking with sobs, slowly walked toward the house, slouching not from age, but from grief. A month passed. One day, while tidying the house, Mrs. Northern found a small orange piece of paper with a telephone number and the name Hector. She had forgotten about him in her longing, but suddenly remembered and shuddered. How could she have refused that desperate father? What right had she to do so? She turned the paper in her hands and reached for the phone. "Hello, Hector. Hello, it's Mrs. Northern. Forgive me, Hector, I was wrong. If you'd like, I'll give you my daughter's address. She took the girl, and you can talk to her." "Mrs. Northern, glad to hear from you." "No, Molly lives with me. Everything is fine now. Tommy is recovering. He's still under medical supervision, but the operation went perfectly." "Why? Why do you have Molly? Why?" Mrs. Northern stammered with excitement. "What do you mean? Didn't you know? Nina said you knew. My family approached her with the same offer I made you. She agreed, but asked for twice as much. It doesn't matter, though. She brought Molly back the day after we spoke. By the way, the girl and I are already friends, and she even calls me Daddy." "I don't understand. So Nina took her own daughter from you and left Molly with you?" "No, Bella stayed with me too. Nina said she wouldn't separate us, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm a father of many children now, so to speak. It's difficult but joyful, as long as Tommy gets well." "So Nina sold you Molly. What kind of—" The sharp word never left Mrs. Northern's lips as she wheezed and collapsed to the floor, clutching the telephone receiver. "Mrs. Northern? Mrs. Northern, are you all right?" Hector listened, but heard only incomprehensible wheezing. He hung up and made another call to the ambulance. "Granny! Granny!" Mrs. Northern opened her eyes and first saw only white hospital walls. Then she felt a small hand stroking her tube-covered arm. "Granny!" "Molly, my granddaughter!" cried the old woman and tried to get up, but a man's hand held her back, and she saw not only her granddaughter but also Hector. "You? Was it you who saved—" "Yes," the man smiled humbly. "The doctors wouldn't let us in, but Molly and I snuck in. I thought seeing her might help you feel better." Thank you. Mrs. Northern was discharged a couple of weeks later. Hector and both girls came to pick her up. "You know what?" Hector said. "I invite you to stay with me. You'll need to see a doctor regularly, and it'll be easier for me to take you to the clinic from my place. You'll stay with your granddaughters. In a month, Tommy will join us. And I need your help. When I visit Tommy, I hire a nanny. And I need your help. When I visit Tommy, I hire a nanny." "But wouldn't it be better if their own grandmother looked after the girls? My cook Sarah handles the meals. My maid Sasha does the cleaning and everything else. But they're outsiders, while you'll always be family. What do you say?" "I agree." Mrs. Northern sighed and patted Hector's shoulder. One day, Hector came home and immediately asked to speak with Mrs. Northern. "You see, Mrs. Northern, there's something— I'm uncomfortable saying this, but Nina—" "Nina what?" The old woman grew alarmed, her eyes flashing menacingly. Thanks to the doctors and Hector's care, she was feeling well, having even forgotten about her back pain. "She's trying to blackmail me, demanding money or threatening to take Bella." "Bella? Really? Well. Hector, does she know I live with you?" "No, I haven't told her." "Good. Then invite her here. I'll handle this myself. This is my responsibility. I am worried about you. You mustn't get upset." "Don't worry. I'm calmer than I've ever been." Nina, anticipating a big payday, walked along the path to Hector's house. She expected him to come out and hand over the money, but instead her mother appeared in the doorway. Nina stopped in surprise and froze as the formidable old woman strode toward her and slapped her face. "Here's your money for Molly. Here's your money for Bella." Nina backed away toward the gate while Mrs. Northern kept striking her with surprising strength. "Get out, you wretch," said Nina's mother, "and don't dare come near this house again." She closed the gate and with a sigh of relief walked toward the house. 3 grandchildren were already running to meet her. 2 girls and a boy, Tommy, who bore a striking resemblance to Molly. Hector came out with them.
"How are you, Mrs. Northern?" "Everything's fine, Hector. Everything's fine, dear. Let's have tea. Sarah and I baked a pie today."
12 happy years passed for this family. Hector, Molly, Tommy, and Bella were returning from the cemetery, 9 days since their beloved grandmother, Mrs. Northern, had died. Until the end, the old woman had remained active, clear-minded and aware. She died peacefully in her sleep, just as she had once wished. The bereaved family visited her grave and was leaving when a beggar approached them with an outstretched hand. She mumbled something before stepping back and walking away. The children didn't notice her, but Hector recognized her. It was Nina. The man shook his head and walked past, while she stared after them for a long time.